The next one, the ghetto. So if you segregate a bunch of folks in a small area of space, the term ghetto don't start with us. I mean, when the Irish came over, there was ghettos in New York. A lot of the immigrants had areas where they were condensed. So the term don't start with us or people of color. And then you have then in 1968, you had some changes in the welfare law where actually we were more included in getting welfare. It was under different names, and we weren't always included to get welfare when it first started. And so you had the no man law. And you know, I understand to some degree what that's all about. You know, I can see, well, if you're a real man, you should be able to take care of your family. Well, that's true. I get a real chance, I'll do that. And that doesn't validate not working. See. But, okay, so now, if I'm a man, I can't be in the house or can't be around my kids. You got the welfare folks snooping around, coming to my house all the time. Because they just hang out in our community. I grew up in the project. They just hung out there. They would be sitting out, just watching. You know. And lo and behold, he better not spend the night. So we got during that period, 1968 up through present, I think around 1975, International Harvester closed, all of it. Now think about this. When my father worked at the International Harvester, we didn't think about going to college. Some of the kids went to college, like all the athletes went to college. But all you had to do was fill out a little postcard-sized piece of paper, put your daddy's name on it, put your Social Security number on it, give it to the guy, and you would get at least 90 days of trial to get the job. That's all you had to do. I worked at the International Harvester for about 3 months. Wasn't my kind of work. I ended up here. That's a whole nother story. But if I'd have took that job in 1972, I'd have been without a job in an environment that wasn't hiring nobody in 1975. My father was the last one was the last group that got a pension. Now, the whole pension thing is a whole nother thing, because my daddy get like $5,000 a month. It's like, golly, I wish I could. He worked there for 25 years as a welder, very committed because he was raised to work. But the interesting thing is when we start talking about trauma, especially black male trauma, my father would come home and be so mad about how he was being treated on that factory. I worked at International Harvester. There was no black supervisors. Young college kids would come out, didn't know nothing about manufacturing, and them would be telling you what to do and would get off on that little power and control stuff. You got a 45, 50-year-old man who's not being treated with any kind of respect, and this is Rock Island. This ain't down south. And so you got this bitter man comes home, and then he comes home to my mother. For all of you who know anything about Prince, there's a thing in there, and my mother was never satisfied. Well, every time I hear that, I think about my mother. And my mother had her own trauma. If we talk about my family, that's why I started this work, because I started paying attention to the history of my own family trauma. I'm third generation of men who traumatized women, drank too much, or did some kind of illegal stuff. And I could go back further. My father's father was Mr. If you've seen Color Purple, he was Mr. If you didn't see Color Purple and you ever say it, Mr., a lot of old black men down south were like Mr. Hard, bitter men who were the last pieces of the slave trade, or last pieces that were still picking cotton. And then you're not talking about this stuff? And then you just shut down, you come home, you have a drink? See, when I think about chemical dependency in parts of our community, it ends up being about What am I? Yeah, I got addiction going on, but this is my stress management piece. Chemical, financial, whole bunch of other pieces, and we'll talk about that a little bit later in parts of the community. So now what do we got? Increase. So we got less factories. The factories going down. Low education, industrial jobs. Remember, my father got a third-grade education, and I got out of high school, and half the kids that got out of my high school could barely read, but they went there and got a job. If I wasn't raised in the church, I would have never known how to read. And I graduated. Drug crime family. So now this takes a heavy toll on that part of the inner city. Okay, and at the same time, people, the middle class was starting to move out as well. So now we got the hyper ghetto. Extreme concentration of underprivileged groups of people in the inner city. Hyper ghetto. Hyper ghetto means that we have very few folks of middle class means left. Large amount of people who are not functioning as we would say in the mainstream. Then we had the war on drugs. Now, there's some folks in my community that said war on black people. You know, and there's always that argument depending on who you're talking to. But if you start digging a little closer, you start to wonder. Black and white sell drugs at the same rate, but blacks are 20 times more likely to go to jail. Crack versus powder cocaine. You know, those folks who start talking about crack cocaine on, with the presidents and all like that, they almost had me fooled. I thought crack was something different. And then I realized it was freebase. We had been doing that back in the day. I really thought, it's like, is this a new drug? Hello, that's nothing but cocaine. Taken with the base off. It's like, whoa. But look, mandatory sentencing. $50 versus $50,000. Same mandatory sentence. Whites are more likely to buy powder cocaine. Take it home, put it in a big old jar, and they do big old chunks. They smoke crack cocaine too, but when you can buy a lot of it, you go home and you can share with your friends. Or you can come in the neighborhood, which was a lot of that. Come in the neighborhood, go pick it up, you go back home. And maybe if you got stopped, you were just told, boy, you need to go back home. See. Now, what happened is one of our local judges lost out on a federal judgeship because she took this to the Supreme Court. Pam Alexander. And they found that to be unconstitutional in terms of that different size. They didn't like the fact that she called and said that's not fair. So,